Football in 2025 hasn't been short on drama, and today we're counting down the 10 most explosive, unforgettable confrontations from the year so far. Moments that went beyond bad calls and turned the beautiful game into full-on fury. Let's begin with an iconic clash that will be remembered for a long time. 1. Club World Cup Final. Enrique's throat grab and Neves' hair pull. Cup Final, and while Chelsea pulled off a miracle by beating a strong PSG 3-0 in New Jersey, what actually stole the headlines was the post-match battlefield. Replays showed PSG manager Luis Enrique grabbing Joao Pedro by the throat, who fell to the turf in shock. Moments later, PSG's midfielder Joao Neves was shown a red card for pulling Marc Cucurella's hair after already being cautioned. What followed was absolute chaos. Players and staff from both clubs poured onto the pitch. PSG goalkeeper Donnarumma squared off with a Chelsea player, and Chelsea head coach Maresca rushed in, bewildered by the turmoil. Enrique later said he meant to defuse things, but that doesn't erase the visuals. It looked like a Keystone Cops remake where tempers won. This battle made evident how crucial it was to win the cup for both teams. PSG had entered the match as favorites, and Chelsea were the underdogs. The result? A title and a viral spectacle. While trophies were lifted, suspensions and questions followed, and the beautiful game took on a bruised new face. 2. Inter Milan versus River Plate, Seattle pitch brawl. In a Group E showdown at the Club World Cup in Seattle, Inter Milan's 2-0 victory over River Plate was expected to be a routine, but instead, it ended in a chaotic mass brawl. Tensions exploded after Marcos Acuna, fuming over a late challenge on Denzel Dumfries, chased him off the pitch. Players and coaching staff swarmed the sideline in seconds, forcing Inter coach Christian Chivu into an impromptu peacekeeping role. Acuna's persistence and Dumfries backing off sparked confrontation with teammates and officials. Red cards followed for River Plate's defenders, Martinez Cuarta and Montiel. Interviews later revealed boiling frustration from both sides. But nothing justifies chasing someone across the touchline at full tilt. For Inter, the win confirmed their dominance. River Plate, on the other hand, came out with a cautionary tale. Sometimes losing your cool costs more than a match. 3. Real Madrid versus Valencia. Vinicius Jr. sees red after heated clash. It was supposed to be a classic comeback, but instead, it turned into a pressure cooker. The scores were equal at 1-1 till the very last, but Real Madrid pulled off a classic comeback thanks to a Jude Bellingham winner in the 95th minute. However, the drama didn't end with the final whistle. It erupted. Deep into stoppage time, with tempers already fraying and the match reaching boiling point, Vinicius Jr. was shoved while challenging for a late cross. But what really flipped the script was what came next. A quick motion toward Valencia goalkeeper Stole Dimitrievski. Hand to face, minimal contact, but enough to trigger VAR. The referee watched the replay and didn't hesitate. Straight red card. Vinicius was stunned. The stadium? Pandemonium. But this moment wasn't isolated either. Vinicius had been targeted throughout the match with persistent fouls and off-ball provocations. He tried to shrug it off, but the accumulated frustration finally cracked towards the end. What followed was a storm of arguments, finger-pointing, and post-match statements from both clubs. Madrid fans defended their star. Valencia fans saw justice. On social media, the clip spread like wildfire, fueling every corner of football Twitter for days. 4. Copa del Rey Final. Triple red chaos for Real Madrid. When the final whistle blew on the 2025 Copa del Rey, you'd expect confetti, hugs, and a trophy lift. But what did you actually get? 3 Real Madrid players were sent off after the match, and a refereeing crew that looked like they needed a security escort out of the stadium. Let's rewind this crazy drama. This year's Copa del Rey final was an El Clasico, and tensions were expected to reach their heights. Throughout the game, both teams gave each other tough competition, and the scoreline remained tied till the full time. Extra time began, and just when we all thought it would go down to a penalty shootout, Jules Koundé scored a stunning goal to give Barcelona the edge. Seeing the cup slipping away from their hands, Madrid players became restless, and as soon as the whistle sounded, all that bottled up fury exploded. Antonio Rudiger, who'd been subbed off earlier, hurled an object toward the fourth official. Red card. Jude Bellingham stormed toward the referee, shouting in disbelief and refusing to walk away until teammates pulled him back. Another red card. Lucas Vazquez got involved next. More shouting, more pushing, and another red. 3 reds, 0 chill. What made this even more surreal was that it all happened while the winners' medals were still being unpacked. There were no team photos and no wholesome jersey exchanges, just disciplinary headlines and La Liga officials trying to count how many matches the suspensions would last. 5. Mourinho grabs a nose. Fenerbahce versus Galatasaray meltdown. If there's one man in football you can count on to turn a derby into a soap opera, it's Jose Mourinho. And in April 2025, he delivered peak Mourinho. In the heat of a red card-filled Turkish Cup quarter-final against bitter rivals Galatasaray, the Fenerbahce boss marched onto the pitch post-match and grabbed opposing coach Okan Buruk by the nose. Yes, his actual nose. This wasn't some subtle sideline muttering, it was a full-on playground move from a Champions League winning tactician. The match itself was already a fireball, 9 yellows, 5 reds, and enough fouls to write a Shakespearean tragedy. The 2-1 scoreline in Galatasaray's favor was completely overshadowed by the mayhem. Security had to step in, players were squaring up, Buruk was understandably livid, and Mourinho, who later called it a misunderstanding, walked away with a 4-match ban and a fine, acting like nothing unusual had happened. Turkish football isn't known for wild moments, but Jose just added one for the archives. Nose first. 6. Notts County versus Kaiserslautern, when a friendly turned into Fight Club. This one is the most recent heated moment in this list. Preseason friendlies are meant to be low stakes, relaxed affairs, but someone forgot to tell this to Notts County defender Barry Cotter. In what should have been a routine runaround against Germany's Kaiserslautern, Cotter decided to deliver a studs-up, ankle-high challenge that had all the finesse of a bulldozer on a racetrack. It was just straight-up aggression, without any subtlety or disguise. Within seconds, Kaiserslautern's players swarmed the scene. Shouts flew, fists clenched, and a full-on pitch brawl broke out. Even the goalkeepers were jogging up to the halfway line to join the fray. The referee didn't hesitate, and Cotter was shown red so fast the card almost caught fire. The game, of course, fell apart after that. What should have been a light warm-up turned into a circus, and both clubs ended up issuing damage control statements post-match. Cotter's challenge made headlines across Europe, not because of the stakes, since there were none, but because of just how wildly unnecessary it was. Lesson learned, there's no such thing as just a friendly when emotions and testosterone collide, especially when Barry Cotter's sliding into your shins like it's the Champions League final. 7. England versus Spain, U21, Livramento tackle sparks 22-man brawl. The U21 Euros were supposed to showcase the next generation of finesse, flair, and future legends. Instead, the England vs. Spain quarterfinal gave us a throwback to the kind of all-out brawl you'd expect at a mid-2000s Old Firm derby. It all kicked off when Spain's Marc Pubil, already playing on the edge, flew in with a reckless studs-up lunge at Tino Livramento in the dying minutes. He didn't make full contact, but that didn't matter. The intent was enough to ignite the powder keg. Within seconds, everyone got involved. Teammates, subs, coaching staff, even assistant coaches stormed the field like it was a WWE Royal Rumble. Ashley Cole, part of England's staff, tried to de-escalate but ended up caught in the chaos. Spain's Rafa Marin, who wasn't even on the pitch, received a straight red for his part in the melee. The match ended 3-1 to England, but no one was talking about the goal. Most of the post-match press was focused on the fight. Some analysts dubbed this fight as was a warning. These youngsters might be future stars, but they've got short fuses, and none of them are backing down without a fight. 8. Everton versus Liverpool, the derby that blew up. The Merseyside derby always promises edge, but in the 2025 edition, it delivered a pure emotional combustion. Everton came out swinging and stunned Liverpool 2-1 at Goodison Park, but the full-time whistle didn't signal the end. It lit the fuse. It started with Abdoulaye Doucouré celebrating in front of the Liverpool away section, cupping his ears and giving it just enough spice to rile up the opposition. Curtis Jones, on the other hand, wasn't having any of it. The Liverpool midfielder stormed over and started shouting chest to chest, and in a heartbeat, chaos erupted. Players pushed, the staff shouted, security swarmed, and then it got even worse. Fans started tossing bottles and objects onto the pitch. The referee, who was already looking overwhelmed and underpaid, handed red cards to both Jones and Doucouré. Not for fouls, but for full-time antics. The footage of the chaos went viral instantly. Pundits argued over who was at fault, but one thing was clear. This had nothing to do with pride. It was about identity. Decades of rivalry, and one team rubbing salt in the wound of another's bad day. 9. PSG's Champions League riot when Paris lost its mind. When PSG crushed Inter Milan 5-0 in the 2025 Champions League final, most clubs would have celebrated with champagne and confetti. But Paris, it burned. The party started euphorically, fans flooded the streets, flares lit up the sky, but within hours, the city had descended into chaos. Over 260 cars torched, 500 people arrested, windows shattered, and clashes with riot police across multiple districts. What should have been a historic night for the club turned into a statewide emergency. Reports confirmed 2 fatalities and dozens of injuries and damage that cost millions. Social media showed scenes of people looting, setting fires, and climbing onto public transport like it was a mosh pit. The club issued a formal statement urging calm, but it was way too late. The footage dominated news for days, making it one of the darkest celebrations in football history. This was a clear proof of how football, when it taps into something deeper, can spark civil unrest, and in this case, victory didn't unite Paris. It split it at the seams. And UAE Pro League, fan brawl in the stands, turns ugly. Shabab Al-Ahli versus Al-Wazl in May 2025 started like any intense UAE Pro League fixture. Fast-paced, tactical, and tense. But when Al-Wazl grabbed a late equalizer, the real eruption happened off the pitch. Fans from both sides had already been exchanging chants, jeers, and not-so-subtle hand gestures. But as the final whistle blew, fists started flying in the stands. A full-on supporter brawl broke out just meters from the pitch. Seats were thrown, barriers were knocked over, a handful of fans even stormed down the steps and onto the sidelines. Security struggled to contain it, and multiple arrests were made. No players were harmed, but the footage of flares, flags, and fists flying became a national talking point. Social media lit up. Commentators called it an embarrassment to the league. But here's the thing. This meltdown was the product of deep-rooted club pride, tight scorelines, and a match that pushed emotions to the edge. And these were 10 most heated football moments in the year 2025 so far. Which one had you on the edge? Let us know on the comments. And for more such riveting videos, take a look at our channel.